There was an unusual degree of black prosperity,
There were successful black entrepreneurs, doctors, teachers, but also black elected officials. In the elections of 1894 and 1896, the Fusion Party defeated the Democrats in sweeping victories statewide. That meant North Carolina now had a government that shared power between black and white politicians, including a newly elected Republican governor. Together, they moved towards reforms that would favor black Americans and working class whites.
This was something that the Democratic Party folks were simply not going to accept.
Racial government wasn't just a disappointment for Democrats. It was more like a humiliation. They needed a plan to take back control of the state in the next election. So party leaders like Furnifold Simmons, future U.S. Senator, Charles Aycock, future North Carolina governor, and this man, Alfred Moore Waddell, came up with one. To beat the Fusion Party by luring white populist voters away from their alliance with black voters.
They don't allow stuff like this on the news gang. This one here is written by John Whitehead. This is kind of a history lesson of how the FBI was infiltrated by the Nazis. Infiltrated is a very specific word, but the thing is the FBI wanted to be infiltrated by the Nazis. They liked the Nazi. The question is, why are so many U.S. senators more responsive to the FBI's desire for Gestapo police power than they are to civil liberties embodied in the U.S. Constitution? If we actually take a look and start breaking this down, we just go to the fact that we have all kinds of secret proceedings. We have secret courts, secret everything here with the FBI where the people don't even know about it. It typically serves to create a more Nazi-ish environment in which our police state can actually blossom from. All law enforcement is eventually affected by everything the FBI does, and I will argue that point because I do work for law enforcement on a contract basis, and the FBI pretty much governs how everything happens within the sheriff's offices or a police department on many different levels over time. This is a fact. So the police state that we know today started with the Nazis and how the Nazis did things. And the only difference between us today and the Nazis of yesteryear is that we have electronic surveillance now. Back in the days of the Nazis, basically they encouraged people to tell on each other. There were financial rewards and other rewards for telling on people. So, well, what happens if your neighbor gets taken away because he said the government was responsible for 9/11? And you are not allowed to even talk about the truth anymore, of who was responsible for 9/11 and, how it happened. Because honestly, if you don't know math and you don't know science, it's easier to believe the government story. If you do know physics and if you do know math, then it's much harder to believe the government story on what happened on 9/11. If you want to talk pure science and pure math, there is no way it happened the way the government said. So it doesn't matter anymore, what the government said. They're just lying. We have the full truth of what happened? No. The government's lying about, they're lying about inflation in the United States of America. They lie about everything. So why would they tell the truth about the fact that they're a Gestapo police state? Why would they come out and admit, yeah, we use the same tactics the Nazis did. In fact, we were so impressed with the Nazis and how vicious and violent they were to taking down opposition that we have literally adopted virtually everything they've done, except we're smarter about it because we're doing it through electronic surveillance. They didn't have that ability. So am I an anti-American? Absolutely not. I love this country. I love the people in this country. But I am saying that there are elements within our government that definitely will serve to take down this republic, this republic, you know, basically is virtually indistinguishable from the republic that we had in the 1890s. It's impossible because we don't have proper representation. Once you elect someone, or is supposedly elect somebody, they work for the military-industrial complex or the big businesses anyway. They don't represent you. They're not looking out for you. And they've always got the same excuses. Well, it's, you know, everyone disagrees. Everyone disagrees. We have to compromise. We have to compromise. Well, when we compromise on something that is against the best interests of the American people, you got to see a pattern. You see a pattern forming. If it's major corporations, particularly, you know, the big corporations, and also the banks. And so let's not forget the banks. Well, that's exactly the way the Nazis operated too, gang. The Republicans I see as socialist and fascist. I see the Democrats as communist and fascist. The troops home. Let's stop these incursions. Let's stop spending enormous amounts of money on something that literally only benefits the corporations. It does not benefit the people. There's nothing wrong with having the military protect us here at home. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, and of course the status quo, the mainstream thought is, if we have our military at home, then they will come and fight us here. Well, the fact of the matter is, we've never tried it before. So, you know, they'll say, nonsense, what about Pearl Harbor? Well, Pearl Harbor was not the mainland. And they knew about Pearl Harbor at least 10 days in advance. They chose to let it happen. So, what about 9/11? Same thing. We get to this police state. And guess what? We wanted it. The American government wanted it badly. The corporations wanted it badly. And the government and the corporations always get what they want. It's the people that never get what they want. Never. Well, very seldom. Let's put it that way. Very seldom do the people get what they want.
The State Democratic Party Handbook for 1898 laid out their goal: consolidate the white vote by stoking white anger and resentment. It said, this is a white man's country and white men must control and govern it. Their most effective tool was the media. One of North Carolina's biggest newspapers was a Democratic Party mouthpiece. It ran racist political cartoons throughout 1898.
Not everybody was literate in 1898, but to see a political cartoon of the type that...
Many of the cartoons were centered on the threat of Negro rule, even though the fusion government was mostly white. They also played up another fear.
Black men threatening white women.
Well, professor, I was a city cop for 5 years and state investigator for 2.5 years. How well are police officers trained in this country? American police officers are some of the best trained in the world, but what they're trained to do is part of the problem. What are they trained to do? You need to stay on your guard all the time, because as soon as you're not, someone's going to take advantage of that, and you can die as a result. And it's not just complacency, it's also hesitation. You not only have to be on your guard, you have to be ready to act instantly. Not react, but act, sometimes even before a threat fully manifests. The cops are taught to see the people around them as potential threats. Former West Point professor Dave Grossman. Now, he teaches classes in something called warrior policing to thousands of law enforcement officers. Main move is telling cops that they are natural-born killers.
You fight violence. What do you fight it with? Superior violence. Righteous violence. Violence is your tool. Violence is your enemy. Violence is a realm we operate in. You are men and women of violence. If you properly prepare yourself, killing is just not that big a deal. It's just not that big a deal.
Yanez was a cop in Minneapolis who took the Grossman seminar just 2 years before this happened.
The dashcam video shows Officer Geronimo Yanez asking Philando Castile for his license and registration. Castile calmly explains he's armed. The 29-year-old officer fired 7 shots within 90 seconds of making the stop.
After they're trained, cops get to play by a completely different set of rules than everyone else. But you know, it's almost impossible to sue a cop. Point is, there is no national database on police misconduct, which is crazy. It's trying to make police records accessible. Cops find ways around it. which we're seeing right now in California. The state legislature recently passed a law that unsealed police records, and cops aren't having it.
Inglewood City Council approved the action to destroy more than 100 police shooting and other investigation records. Inglewood Mayor James Butts tells us that the decision to throw out these old records has nothing to do with hiding any wrongdoing.
These records were sitting in a storehouse, just gathering dust, taking up space. Some went back as far as 1991.
We can't talk about a system that can incentivize bad behavior without talking about police unions. Now, for the record, I'm not anti-union. The problem is that police unions don't just work to get cops better pay. Many police union contracts shield bad cops from legal consequences. How are police unions blocking reform? Oh my God, how are they not blocking reform? The collective bargaining agreements that they engage with at individual police agencies will often have provisions relating to police discipline. It may limit how officers are investigated. It may limit how officers are disciplined. It may require that an officer's disciplinary records be cleared every 60 days. That means there's no history even when an officer is engaged in misconduct repeatedly. Like in Chicago. After police shot and killed Ron McDonald, their union gave officers 24 hours before needing to say anything after the shooting.
The contract itself institutionalizes these private understandings among police officers that make it harder to identify and root out bad behavior. If we allow a lot of time to pass after something happens, and if we allow people to talk to one another about it, worst case scenario is that time period basically gives them an opportunity to concoct and to collude.
A recent study found that when deputies in Florida got union contracts, violent misconduct complaints went up 40%. They can be put into law with something called a law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights.
Law enforcement Bill of Rights is essentially the protections of a union contract in the form of a state law. Police unions have worked with at least 16 states to pass officer Bill of Rights laws, and they come with some jarring provisions. So after a critical incident like a police shooting, Bill of Rights might say that the officer has the right to review certain evidence, including potentially statements by other witnesses or video recordings of the incident. Wait, so if they get to review the tape in a proceeding, I get to review the tape too, right? No. So let me get this straight. A police officer is under investigation. Before making a statement, they can say, hey, can I look at the tape first? They can make a demand. And then they watch the game tape and then make their statement. It can be. Wait, no. What's that? Even in the NFL, when the refs are reviewing the tape, everyone in the stadium can also see the replay. That's why there's the big ass boo when unions don't tend to see it as their job to create positive policing. They tend to see it as their job to protect their current members.
Sometimes protection becomes obstruction, but sometimes protection becomes obstruction. Police unions have gotten paid leave for cops who kill.
On behalf of the 5,200 brave men and women in the Houston Police Department and the other 800,000 police officers that are working the streets every single day, putting their lives on the line. We are sick and tired of having targets on our back. We are sick and tired of having dirtbags trying to take our lives when all we're trying to do is protect this community and protect our families. Enough is enough. And if you're the ones that are out there spreading the rhetoric that police officers are the enemy, well, just know we've all got your number now. We're going to be keeping track of all of y'all, and we're going to make sure that we hold you accountable every time you stir the pot on our police officer. We've had enough, folks. We're out there doing our jobs every day, putting our lives on the line for our families. Enough is enough.
Based on my protected disclosures of information to the 9/11 Commission and to Congress regarding Operation Able Danger. Many of us take seriously our oath of office to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We demonstrate our commitment by decades of service to this country, trying to conduct operations to ensure our citizens are protected. There are officers within the bureaucracy who abandon their oath of office and instead become focused on a strategy of self-preservation, of obstruction of accountability. A culture now exists in which leaders with this abhorrent set of values are in charge of large portions of the intelligence community. It was our missteps before 9/11 that materially contributed to our failure to detect and neutralize the 9/11 attacks. With disclosure of able danger information to the 9/11 Commission and to members of Congress was not the only factor in the revocation of my clearance. It is my judgment and the judgment of others that is the primary reason DI made such an obvious and justifiable effort to remove and silence me. It is notable that I've been requested, as Congressman Walden pointed out, to speak in front of the House Armed Services Committee to provide a top-secret full disclosure testimony on the Able Danger operation tomorrow. Let me be upfront here. I am no Boy Scout. I was not hired as an intelligence officer because I hung out at the Christian Science reading room. My job is to get information using tried and true intelligence methodologies, techniques that go back to the dawn of civilization. I've been trained to take risks, to create high-risk, high-gain operations, which I did successfully for 20 years. My awards and accolades have been provided to the committee for your background, and according to my legal counsel, until I disclosed the Able Danger information, I was a rock star.
Just an intelligence failure. But contrary to the official narrative, sufficient intelligence was available that should have prevented the attacks. It's an assertion that my next guest has risked his reputation to prove. His name is Anthony Schaefer, and is a retired Army colonel who alleges that a multitude of information about the hijackers was available before 9/11. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Good to be on.
While in the military, you oversaw a program called Able Danger. What exactly is Able Danger, and what was your role in overseeing it?
Able Danger was essentially a Special Operations Command program. Pre-9/11, we're talking about 1999 to 2001, targeting of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, as you will recall, was attacking our embassies in East Africa. So we had a session, I was undercover in Bagram, Afghanistan in 2003, October, 10 years ago. And we actually laid it out to him of what had happened, and he felt it was important, actually asked me to come back and testify to the 9/11 Commission about the issues. And next thing you know, I'm essentially shuffled out, suspended for minor issues, and next thing you know, I'm fired. And it turned out it all was about the fact that I disclosed this information to Philip Zelikow, and by his staff's own admission, it was a path they did not want to go down, because they did not want to have to basically admit to the fact that they found Mohammed Atta and some of the other 9/11 hijackers in this database, and obviously if we found them, we could have done something to prevent the attack. The commission, I believe there was a conspiracy. This is where I disagree with a lot of the 9/11 truthers. There was a conspiracy. It's not about the government, our government, U.S. government participating. It's about covering your behind. It's about the fact that there was massive failure, a failure at a scale which continues to haunt us. Don't forget that part of our mistakes right now, 10 years into the Afghan war, 12 years into the Afghan war, is because of this incompetence. And it has to do with the fact that even though we had the information, bureaucrats, some of which are still in the system, went about trying to prevent it from being shared properly within the agencies of the government that could take action. So this is what the real cover-up is all about, and that's what I think was the real core issue of why they went after me and tried to prevent this information from becoming public.
Do you think they really cared about their credibility, though? It seemed like they were pretty brazen and arrogant about kind of leading the charge with all these new wars. And I just find it hard to believe that they would go through such extremes.
Not at all. This was all about protecting the bureaucracy and the individuals in the bureaucracy. One of the individuals who was actually involved in this was Keith Alexander. He was actually the Central Command Senior Intelligence Officer during the time we were running up to this. So a lot of the folks had a lot to lose had they come forth or been identified as someone who did not act properly to share information. And this is the key. Bureaucracies tend to protect themselves. And I spoke to Don Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, in a green room of another network about this. And we talked about this. He said, well, we feel we were lied to by the bureaucracy. And he said that was a common occurrence. So, as much as I had to clear the air with him on some of the issues that regarding Able Danger, because I disclosed this during his watch, he said the bureaucracy commonly lied to him. So let's remember that there's a bureaucracy that's separate from the political parties, and I think that's what we have to always remember, that they will always try to protect themselves.
Interesting.
Always try to protect themselves.
Interestingly enough, Congressman Kurt Weldon in 2005 said that the Pentagon employee had been ordered to destroy 2.5 terabytes of data about Able Danger before 9/11.
Absolutely. Again, the idea of covering up wrongdoing and inconsistencies in process is something not new. And so remember, NSA just was recently caught again doing some things to say that they're protecting things, but they're really not. This is a pattern. This is a pattern of bureaucracy. No political party will ever control this completely, but each political party will be victimized by it, by the fact that this other branch of government, this third branch, outside the Democrats, Republicans, you've got this bureaucracy will always do things to protect itself, and that's what we've seen.
Anthony, we have about a minute left or 30 seconds left, but you mentioned the third rail, that bureaucratic reigning entity. What is that?
Well, so much of what goes on in the government is professional or career bureaucrats, people who sign up. IRS is a good example of that, where you have career bureaucrats who spend their entire lives inside the government. Often they worship mediocrity, and their coin of the realm is process. Everything becomes process, and it's all about trying to basically not do anything bad or wrong, but let's not do anything good either. And so when something goes wrong, they don't want to be blamed for it.
Maintain the status quo.
Maintain the status quo.
Retired Colonel Anthony Schaefer.
About something or someone, or reading what someone else has written about someone, somebody can confuse you and misuse you. You and I have to learn to weigh things for ourselves, which is clear. I am not a racist in any form whatsoever. I don't believe in any form of racism. I don't believe in any form of discrimination or segregation.
Come over, and you develop political maturity. You're able to see and think for yourself. And you can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself